Have you ever noticed that not everyone thinks about money the same way? For some people, it feels stressful. It creates pressure. It influences far more decisions than they expected. It shows up in the background of everyday choices. Whether a purchase feels responsible, whether a plan should wait a little longer, or whether a certain opportunity feels just slightly out of reach. Then there are some people you meet who approach money very differently. They're thoughtful about it, but they're rarely preoccupied by it. They make financial decisions calmly, and money doesn't seem to dominate the way they think about their lives. Usually, it's not about how much money someone has. It's about how they think about it. I've noticed that the women who seem most at ease with money tend to approach it through a set of principles that quietly shape how they earn it, spend it, and live with it. Welcome back to Gracefully Lori. I'm Lori. If you're new here, this channel is for women who want to live authentically, express themselves with intention, and move through the world with quiet, modern grace. Today, we're going to explore 6 principles that often shape how graceful women think about money. And if you understand these principles, money stops feeling like something you're constantly thinking about and starts feeling like something that simply supports the life you want to live. Principle 1. Have you ever noticed how easily conversations about money drift into quiet comparisons? Someone shares a promotion. Someone else talks about an investment that performed well. Another person mentions the value of their home. Individually, these moments are harmless enough, but over time, they can subtly change how we measure ourselves. Instead of asking whether a decision fits our priorities, we begin wondering how it looks from the outside. Are we progressing quickly enough? Are we doing as well as we should be by now? Are we keeping up with the people around us? And without realizing it, money begins to function less like a resource and more like a scorecard. But graceful women don't compare their lives or their financial resources to what others may have. Instead, they ask more practical questions. Does this support the life I want to live? Does this decision align with what actually matters to me? Money becomes something they use intentionally rather than something that quietly measures their success. And once money is in its proper role, something else often begins to change as well. Principle 2. Have you ever noticed how easy it is to fall into a cycle of constant upgrading? A home that once felt exciting slowly begins to feel slightly too small. Furniture that once seemed perfect suddenly feels temporary. Clothes that once felt special begin to feel ordinary. Sometimes the idea takes root that everything in life should continually improve and that we need the next best thing. The upgraded phone, the more luxurious vacation, the better car, etc. And when that expectation becomes normal, satisfaction becomes surprisingly difficult to maintain. Because as soon as something new arrives, attention begins drifting towards what might come next. Graceful women draw a quiet line around the idea of enough, not because they lack ambition, but because they recognize that constantly upgrading every part of life rarely creates the satisfaction they expect. Instead, they begin curating their lives more intentionally. Their focus shifts from acquiring more to choosing well. So money begins to feel less demanding and more supportive. They choose homes that genuinely suit their lives rather than endlessly pursuing larger ones. They invest in pieces that last rather than replacing things repeatedly. They know when good enough is good enough. Personally, there's one area of my life where I spend the minimal amount of money I can while still considering safety and comfort, and that is my car. I think of a car as a way to get from one place to another, and I keep my cars as long as possible. In fact, my father once asked me why I didn't buy a nice car because he knew I could afford one. I honestly think he just wanted me to buy it so he could drive it. Anyway, without hesitation, I told him I'd rather save that money or spend it on items or experiences that bring me more joy. For example, I've always traveled internationally, and not having a large car payment helps me do that. When financial decisions begin to feel more deliberate, another financial question begins to appear. But before we continue, if you're finding this video valuable, please consider liking the video and subscribing. Doing so helps get this video distributed to others who may want to see it. Now, back to our financial principles. Principle 3. Have you ever noticed how often money limits the choices people feel able to make? Someone stays in a job that clearly drains them. Someone postpones a move they've been considering for years. Someone hesitates to pursue an opportunity because the timing never quite feels safe. From the outside, these choices can sometimes seem puzzling, but many of them are shaped by something we rarely talk about: the degree of flexibility a person feels they have. When our financial life feels fragile, even small decisions carry significant risk. And when that risk feels too high, life can begin to feel narrower than it needs to be. Graceful women often think about money less in terms of what it can purchase and more in terms of what it allows them to choose. They build financial lives that expand their range of options. That means they have the freedom to step away from the career that no longer fits, the flexibility to travel more freely, or simply the ability to shape their life in a way that reflects their priorities. Money becomes less about accumulation and more about protecting the ability to make meaningful choices. At one point, I made a career choice that highly impacted my income. I stepped back from a higher paying job to take a lower level role with less pay. Doing that was deliberate. After years of putting in so many hours, I wanted and needed a much better work-life balance. To this day, I don't regret that decision. When life begins to feel more flexible, something else often becomes equally important. Principle 4. Have you ever noticed how many small decisions quietly involve financial calculation? Whether a car repair can wait, whether a purchase feels responsible, whether a plan should be postponed just a little longer. Most of the time, these calculations happen silently and often create stress, but they influence far more of daily life than we often realize. Because when financial life feels uncertain, every small decision can carry an unexpected weight. Graceful women often focus on something that changes that feeling entirely: financial stability and security. Real financial security doesn't simply improve numbers on a page. It changes the emotional tone of everyday life. Building savings, maintaining an emergency fund, developing thoughtful long-term investments are some practical ways women begin creating that stability. I'm fortunate that my job offers us free access to a certified financial planner. Working with him has allowed me to better understand my savings and retirement needs, as well as the best investment strategy for me at this stage of my life. Not everyone has access to such a great resource, but if you need some financial help and can't afford a planner, you may be able to get some education and/or assistance through your bank. If not, they may be able to offer some great alternatives like financial planning tools. As our financial foundations grow stronger, financial life often begins to feel calmer. Decisions that once felt stressful begin to feel manageable. Plans that once felt uncertain begin to feel possible. Over time, that sense of security creates something deeply valuable: peace of mind. And when money begins to feel steady rather than stressful, another change often appears quietly alongside it. Principle 5. Have you ever noticed how different people talk about money in conversations? Some people talk about it constantly: what something costs, what someone earns, and what they've acquired. Others barely bring it up at all, yet you still sense that they are entirely comfortable with their financial lives. The difference often has less to do with income and more to do with approach. For some people, money becomes a way of signaling status. For others, it remains something private and understated. Graceful women tend to carry money with a certain quiet dignity. They don't need to display it, compare it, or center conversations around it. For example, they rarely discuss what things cost. They don't use money to elevate themselves above others, and they're often just as comfortable in simple environments as they are in more luxurious ones. Money remains present in their lives, but it never becomes performative. I call this financial dignity. We've talked about how graceful women approach money in their current financial landscape, but what role should it play as we go forward? Principle 6. Once stability and freedom have been built, many women begin thinking about money in a very different way. They begin thinking about what I call stewardship. Stewardship simply means managing resources thoughtfully and intentionally. That might involve supporting family members, contributing to causes that matter deeply, or simply making financial decisions that reflect personal values. Money becomes less about accumulation and more about responsibility. I know many of us at our age find ourselves in the position of caring for our parents, which can be both difficult and expensive. Helping them financially or helping to resource them is an example of financial stewardship. So stewardship is not about status, it's about purpose and serving those we feel may need help. When you step back and look at the women who seem most at ease with money, something becomes clear. They've simply decided what role money will play in their lives. They treat it as a tool rather than a scorecard. They know when something is enough. They build flexibility and stability over time. They carry money with quiet dignity. And eventually, they begin stewarding it thoughtfully. Graceful women don't build their lives around money. They build lives that matter to them and allow money to support those lives. If this conversation resonated with you, please like the video so others have a better chance of seeing it. Also, which of these perspectives has shaped the way you think about money the most? Please share that in the comments below. I read them all and appreciate your thoughts. And if you enjoy thoughtful conversations about living well, from personal style to travel to the way we shape our lives, I hope you'll consider subscribing. Until next time, my graceful friends.